morning, everyone. I welcome you all to the National CME on ICD-11 Mental, Behavioural or Neurodevelopmental Disorders. How does it impact your psychiatric training and practice? We will be starting with the first session, which would be given by Dr. Debashish Basu on ICD-11 Mental, Behavioural or Neurodevelopmental Disorders, a necessary evil or a game changer. I would like to welcome the chairpersons and introduce them. Our first chairperson is Professor P. Kulhada, who's currently a consultant psychiatrist in Fortis Mohali. He's been a senior professor and ex-head of department, PGIMER Chandigarh. His areas of interest are schizophrenia, phenomenology, course, and outcome. He has a number of papers, number of publications to his credit, including 240 scientific papers in national and international journals, 138 scientific papers in national journals, 102 scientific papers in journals published from abroad, 156 indexed papers in index journals, and around 30 book chapters with 6 edited publications. He's completed 43 research projects. He's successfully guided 41 MD theses and 5 PhD theses. Sir has been awarded with the Dr. Vidyasagar Award of ICMR in 1989, Dr. G.C. Borrell Award of IPS North Zone in 1997, and the Marfatia Award of IPS in 1998. He's a fellow of the Royal College of Psychiatrists and the National Academy of Medical Sciences. The second chairperson for today is Dr. Ritu Nehra, who is a professor of clinical psychology in the Department of Psychiatry, PGIMER Chandigarh. Her areas of interest are development of culturally relevant psychological scales, neurocognitions, social cognitions in patients of schizophrenia and bipolar affective disorders. She has a number of publications to her credit, including 65 published papers and 8 book chapters, and she's edited 1 book. Ma'am has won the Marfatia Award for the paper at 65th Annual National Conference of IPS at Bangalore in 2013. She's won the first award in poster presentation at Indo-American Psychiatric Society in the Thomas Jefferson University in Philadelphia, and the second Best Paper Award at the 5th International Conference on Schizophrenia in Chennai in 2012. I would now like to hand over the mic to the chairpersons to further introduce the speaker and conduct the session.
Hello, everyone. Am I audible?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Can I continue? It's nice to see your smiling face, Debashish. And I've been
Yes,
given this onerous and heavy task of introducing you. I think that's a joke, in the sense that I don't need to introduce you. Everybody knows you. And if I were to introduce you and talk about you, perhaps it will take the whole session.
I have been your one of the most notorious students. You can introduce me like that also.
Notoriety is my fame. Therefore, notorious people will be my colleagues. Anyway, I don't think I will spend time in introducing you. I'll save that time so that you can present and we can have a lively to lovely discussion on the topic. However, just introducing the topic a little bit, a person like me is a fossilized person who can bask in the glory of knowing and telling everyone that when he started his psychiatry in PGIMER Chandigarh, we were dealing with ICD-8. Then we lumbered with ICD-9, we are saddled with ICD-10 and waited an eternity for ICD-11 to appear, which it has finally appeared in 2021, years late, but it's better late than never. 2 words I will say: any classification system is a necessity, but if not used properly, it is devilish. So the topic which Debashish is going to talk about is very, very apt. Just the fundamental principle, to my mind, any classification system should be jointly exhaustive and mutually exclusive. That means the categories there should be able to describe all the disorders under the sun, but at the same time, the categories should mutually exclude and should not be overlapping. How far we have succeeded in that, only time will tell, or Devashish will tell. So I invite Ritu Nehra to say a few words, and then we invite Devashish to deliver his most dynamic, energetic, and erudite lecture. Ritu.
Good morning, everybody. Sir has already said that we should not be wasting time, and there is no need to really introduce Dr. Basu. For him, he was a student, and for me, he was a friend. We have grown together in the department, and today he is there as head of the Department of Psychiatry. So I think with this, we invite Dr. Basu to enlighten us about the topic, which is a very important topic for all of us. Over to Dr. Basu.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Kulhara, sir, who is my most revered teachers in psychiatry, who I would always cherish and respect for imparting hardcore clinical skills and knowledge in clinical psychiatry. And also as introduced, my colleague, Professor Ritu Nehra, a very long association of last 34 years now. And my dear friends, colleagues, students, and all delegates and participants, as Dr. Abhishek said, from all over the country, and some from international background as well. This is the first of the series of the talks, and also we have this very interesting breakout sessions later on, as Dr. Abhishek has already told you, a kind of a workshop manner later in the day. So this is a kind of a setting the game, you know, or setting up the game or the field, really. I'm not going to talk about any individual disorder, because the important disorder groups will be talked about by individual, very well-renowned speakers. My job is to set the ball rolling, get the ball rolling by talking about what was the need for yet another ICD-11. You know, very recently we have had a very famous distinguished speaker series talk by none other than Professor Norman Sartorius, virtually given to our departmental students and alumni. And there, one of the questions asked later on was that do we, people say that, oh, your conditions are not valid, and what are you doing? You keep on changing your diseases, disorders. What is this hullabaloo all about? And then he said that, see, we make a lot of noise about it. Everybody changes the disorders depending upon advances his knowledge. But we make a lot of noise because we are serious about it. But at the same time, he also said that probably for the next 30 or 40 years, we should not be making any further change. So we have both the sides of the story, and this is what we come from. Okay, so is it a necessary evil or possibly a game changer? Just a disclosure that I was appointed an expert reviewer for certain components of the field testing of substance use and other addictive disorder section of the ICD-11. Other than this, I declare no other conflicts of interest. Let me go back to a little bit of history, because this some people might not know, that the younger people. It started in India in 1967 April, when a paper was published in the Indian Journal of Psychiatry. By then, an assistant professor of psychiatry, if you can read the lower lines, an assistant professor of psychiatry in the, and note the line, Institute of Postgraduate Medical, that was the original name of PGIMER. It was not PGIMER, it was IPGMER. But later the people had difficulty, and later the name was changed. Institute of Postgraduate Medical Research, Chandigarh, and another person who was then an assistant professor of psychiatry, Medical College in Amritsar, who spent some time in the Department of Psychiatry as a fellowship. And this is that paper. A proposed classification of psychiatric disorders for use in India. by then Assistant Professor N.N. Vig, who had upon his return from UK, and Professor Gurmeet Singh, the two doyens of psychiatry, who during that time, while being in the PGI, they proposed a classification for use in India, which was far, far, far ahead of its time, really. I'm grateful to Professor Srinivas Murthy for sharing some other material. We'll come to that. But this is important because it will set a backdrop to why we're talking about that. The department has talked about that, since 1967, so we are so many years ago. They noted in their paper, I quote a little bit of relevant portions from that paper, most of the mental hospitals, 1967 we are talking about, and psychiatric centers use a variety of nomenclature, usually depending on the favorite textbook of the head of the institution. What they have not mentioned, at times the diagnoses were made by HODs, of which I am one now, so I have to share the responsibility, by feeling that, oh, this patient feels like schizophrenia, that kind of a thing. And then they also noted that if a worker A finds a certain prevalence of schizophrenia in Agra, or another worker finds a certain incidence of schizophrenia in Madura, we have to first make sure that they mean the same thing by these terms, because it was not there. The US-UK Diagnostic Project is an ample testimony to that what was called as schizophrenia in one part of the across the Atlantic was affective disorder elsewhere. They also mentioned that a number of psychiatrists who had the opportunity to get their training in Europe or North America, which both of them, by the way, both Professor N.N. Vig and Dr. Gurmeet Singh had that, have found on their return that our clinical material does not easily fit into the existing categories of WHO International or the APA classification. That was the time of DSM-2, and WHO means ICD. That was ICD-8, just about to be released. ICD-8 was released, I think, 1968 or so. So the young DPM students, those days was DPM, are frequently bewildered trying to fit in their cases in the standard Western classifications, and lament that the so-called typical textbook pictures, the typical textbook pictures of Western psychiatry are not often met with in actual practice. And from there, they made a very prophetic statement. This is a statement. We feel that instead of straining ourselves to mold our patients to Western classifications, we should mold these classifications to fit our patients. That was a profound prophetic statement. And we thus feel that there's a need for a new classification, which would take into account the specific manifestations of psychiatric illnesses in this part of the world. And they proposed their classification, of which one at least has stuck. And this is what they proposed as acute psychosis of uncertain etiology, which has now it is established now after all these years as acute transient psychotic disorders. And they mention in this number 27, this is one of the main innovations of our classification of psychotic disorders, and we propose to discuss it at a little more at length. So then there's a long discussion on that, but this is the beginning, and this is the history of the department in contributing to the classification. Courtesy Professor Srinivas Murthy, who was kind enough to share this book, painstakingly scanned to me in 2002. It just talks about from developing countries, and you can see that the editors are very big people. The names don't need any introduction. Okay, Mario Mai and Wolfgang Gabel, Lopez Iber and Norman Sartorius. This was a chapter by Murthy and Vig, 2002, in classifying all developing countries. I'm not going into the details of that, but in the end, what they noted is that there are shortcomings in the current classificatory systems related to cultural differences. So there was no global applicability at that time. It was more of European style, or American style, the big powers, but the globe, the world was not represented. There were shortcomings on health service grounds because the health service ground reality was often neglected, and shortcomings on clinical description and clinical grounds. So these are important even now today when we discuss the need for ICD-11. So here we have ICD-11, the book and the browser, which gives all the details, free for all, open public resource document, which we are all aware of. And as you know that in 2019 May, it was finally it was adopted. In 2018, actually June 2018, WHO released the ICD-11. It was still the beta draft at that time. 2019 May, it was adopted by the 72nd General Assembly, the largest body of the WHO in the world. And it's supposed to be used to start using for coding the mortality and morbidity statistics from January 1 next year. So we are getting close there. But having said that, and they replaced this ICD-10, the blue book, the so-called blue book that we are all very familiar with, 1992, and 2 years later, the green book, the diagnostic. So the blue book is the clinical descriptions and diagnostic guidelines, and the green book is a DCR, the diagnostic criteria for research. So it replaces them after more than 25 years. And now comes the pain for you at least, or for all of us. And we start saying, oh God, not again, not yet another classification and learning all these new codes and all these diagnoses and categories and subcategories, yet all over and over again. No more codes, please. ICD-10 had total of about 10,000 codes. I mean, the major codes of otherwise. Okay, so somebody had muted me, which I think is my friend there. Anyway, so and ICD-11 has already nearly 15,000 codes. So more of trouble for all of us. And yeah, okay. And 21 major categories under the MBN, mental, behavioral, and neurodevelopmental chapter in ICD-11, from only 10 in ICD-10. From 10, it's a straight enhance of 21. A lot of cognitive and intellectual work for us. Is it worth it? That is the question. Is it worth it? Alan Francis has been one of the strongest critics of DSM-5, but interestingly, Alan Francis was the chair of the task force of DSM-4 himself. And he says some very interesting things in his interview to Psychiatric Times. He says that to me, it is clear that the world would be a better place if we are still using DSM-3. And the next more tongue-in-cheek comment from Alan Francis, modern medicine is making such rapid advances. Soon, none of us will be well. You can see it in the case of hypertension and diabetes and their lowered criteria. So we are all kind of at risk somewhere. And then he says, if I were in control of psychiatric diagnosis today, I would recommend a reduction in diagnostic inflation, because there is this diagnostic kind of inflation. So through a risk-benefit analysis, we need an evaluation of which diagnosis and what diagnostic thresholds do more harm than good, so that we don't over pathologize or medicalize common day problems as medical disorders. So is it a necessary evil? Why? Because to my mind, human beings, right from the beginning of Mohenjo-daro or whenever they were, an essential need has been to control. To control. I'm not talking about only the politicians. I'm talking about all of us. We need to control things, to keep things under control. And for that, we need to A, understand or explain things, the natural things, nature. From there, to predict, from predicting an earthquake to predicting who might die by suicide. And then accordingly to deal with and treat and manage. This is an essential human need. Maybe chimpanzees also have this need. Hence, we have the need to organize, which is sorting things. Otherwise, we can't do that. Arrange things, stack, and retrieve when needed, pull out from the library. Okay. Other than that, we can't do the. And then the critics or the Stoics would say, oh, when you have nothing much else to do, why not reclassify the same things in different ways, like a kid, like a child does, and says, oh, now I've got the new Lego game, and made a rail of a coach out of a house or something like that. The ideal classification, as Dr. Kulhara sir said in his introductory comments, should be mutually exclusive and jointly exhaustive. So they cover all the natural kinds. But the question is that, the more central question is that they should be based on valid categories. So when you have categories, which is like nature carved at its joints in different entities, which are real entities, with zones of rarity, as Robert Kendall has been talking about from a very long time, they must have zones of rarity in between. So there should not be a kind of a common area between an apple and an elephant. There must be a very clear zone of rarity conceptually. That is a valid. So a thing is either valid or not valid. There's no gradient in between. It's real or not real. Okay. Problem. Over the years, validation of psychiatric disorders have proven difficult to impossible. The famous late 60s to 1970s, Robin and Goose's criteria for validation, which most of us would be aware of, the classical 5 validators. By every diagnosis to be valid must have a cogent, clear clinical description, must be delineated from other bordering conditions, should have laboratory or investigative tests as biomarkers to validate them, should have family studies to show that they run in the family, and should have follow-up to delineate a specific course and outcome. And later, Kenneth Kendler added a 6th criteria of differential responsive to treatments. Unfortunately, with 50 years, after half a century, we have to sadly say that this has not, with barring exceptions here and there, but at a gross level, this has not been successful. I'm not going to the details because that will take another full 1-hour lecture on why on all these grounds we can show that there are huge gaps and failures. We have not been able to validate in a clear-cut sense anything of a natural kind type. It was as if we were, by that 1900 poem of the blind men and the elephant, it was 6 men of Hindustan to learning much inclined, like us psychiatrists, who went to see the elephant, though all of them were blind, that each by observation might satisfy his mind. And then you know what happened? Everybody touched one part of because they were blind, so they were touching different parts of the elephant, and depending upon which part they were touching, some felt it was the elephant is less like a wall, like a rope, like a snake, like a this, like a that. And so these men of Hindustan disputed loud and long, each in his own opinion, exceeding stiff and strong, though each was partly in the right and all were in the wrong. This is where we stand. In the face of this apparent failure, my friends, there have been very different reactions to the condition. One extreme, one complete extreme is completely disbelieving in psychiatric diagnosis. They don't exist. You know, that's the anti-psychiatry approach of the stand. Or the other one, the other extreme, believe that the current system is valid and continue as it is. Just overlook, just believe that they're fine. The third, the NIMH approach, or the the RDOC, the research domain criteria approach, is dismantle the current nosology. As you know, they have not accepted DSM-5 and take a bottoms-up approach from different domains, starting fresh from the biological substrates at different levels. A fourth reaction is to further expand diagnostic categories, to split them into smaller units, like DSM-5 does, more and more and more. This is what Alan Francis talks about as diagnostic expansionism or colonialism or inflation. So just keep on increasing and make smaller parts, thinking that the smaller parts are the truer parts or the more real parts. Not necessarily true. And the last one is the try to incorporate whatever upgraded knowledge has been in this area and make the best fit, the quote unquote, not necessarily the ideal, but make the best fit for global clinical application. This is the approach of ICD-11. So the central debate, as I've just mentioned, is about of the natural kinds, whether schizophrenia and affective disorders, they are two different natural kinds with zones of rarity in between. That is talking about validity versus whether it's practical or pragmatic kinds, things which we don't know whether they are absolutely true or not, but whether they're useful or not. That's the question. That's what ICD-11 takes the stand. We don't know as yet if the categories are valid, but the central question is not that. Central question, are these useful? So why was ICD-10 necessary, even if quote unquote evil? because it needed to accommodate advances in knowledge construed over the past almost 30 years since the 1990 version came up. Need to accommodate global perspectives. Remember Wiegand paper, Wiegand-Singh's 1967 paper, and the later developing countries paper by Murthy and Weg. Need to harmonize with other nosologies, especially DSM-5, rather than having two competing nosologies and making things even more hellish for the students. Need to reach, this is a very important thing. We have a large number of non-psychiatric trainees in today's group. So, you know, we have clinical psychologists, social workers, and other groups. There was a felt need to reach non-specialists, especially primary care physicians and non-medical mental health professionals. It was important to reach them as well. And finally, the last need was to push for preventive and public health aspects, which is very important. So these are the drivers of ICD-11, and that's very important because I am not going to talk about disorders, as I said. Clinical utility, we'll spend a few more slides on this because this is the primary driver of ICD-11, as I've struggled to explain that why it has shifted its emphasis from valid to utilizable categories. Global applicability we have talked about. It should be applicable, mind you, to 194. That's the number members of the WHO. 190 plus. It's not an easy task at all. From Zambia to Indonesia, it's not easy with their huge cultural differences. It must be culturally relevant and should generate comparable and digitalized data for monitoring and data collection. That's ultimately is the role of statistics, isn't it, for ICD, the ICD system, if it starts historically, as you know, only as a statistical coding of causes of death. And the third and the very important, these are three perspectives. The third is the public health perspective, which means focus on preventive aspects, focus on non-specialist use, focus on scalability at a population level, not only at the mental hospital level, not even at the psychiatric central level, but at the primary healthcare level. And last but not the least, reducing stigma of mental illness, a very important thing. Hence, questioning the organic, non-organic difference. As Professor, one of our senior professors in neurology used to say that, okay, दिमाग में कुछ नहीं है, brain में कुछ नहीं है, तो अब नीचे चले जाओ, psychiatry में चले जाओ, which means कि it's nothing there, as if we deal with only non-real condition. So reducing the stigma of mental illness. This famous paper by Robert Kendall and Asen Jablensky, famous people from WHO of the yesteryears, this came up in 2003, distinguishing between validity and utility of psychiatric diagnosis, and a companion paper next year from Michael First of the DSM group. These are again all people talking about why clinical utility is important, and they define clinical utility as the extent to which DSM, they spoke about DSM because they were talking about DSM there, but also ICD, assists the clinical decision makers in fulfilling the different clinical functions of a psychiatric classification system. So it's no longer that whether it's there or not there, it's longer whether it's useful for us or not. What clinical functions is a diagnosis supposed to serve? These were the 5 which First et al. Proposed. Conceptualizing diagnostic entities, communicating clinical information to other people, to practitioners, patients, their families. So you need a communication system, health system administrators. Third, using these criteria in clinical practice for interviewing and differential diagnosis. Fourth, choosing effective interventions to improve clinical outcomes. And 5, predicting future clinical management needs. We all know that these are essential per function of a diagnosis, but they focus that these should be the defining features of a diagnosis and not whether they are necessarily valid or non-valid. It's a pragmatic approach. It's a graded approach. Unlike validity, whether it's yes or no, it is how much, the extent to which it serves, a diagnosis serves a clinical function, and each diagnosis should contain essential information about the category, convey this uniformly to all, should be easy to use in terms of understandability and time to use, and should give some indication regarding treatment and outcome, while continuing searching for validity. That is not to be stopped. ICD-11 is not saying that you stop searching for validity, but they're focused, they're balancing validity with utility. And these are the questions which I was asked by the WHO for the testing, for the field testing. And these are the real practical questions which I believe can guide the rest of the day's discussion. That's why I decided to just put up these questions. The questions I was asked about substance use disorder categories, of course, there, but applicable to all the diagnoses. Do you agree that the proposed clinical description and guidelines for this category accurately reflect the clinical reality or capture the presentation of the patient's symptoms? So it becomes culturally valid as well, right? I mean, culturally applicable. Do you agree that this category is clear and easy to understand? That is from the public health and the non-specialist perspective. Do you agree? Of course, they were all varied levels of a Likert scale of agreement, so that they are applicable to real life contexts and different settings. Again, the public health approach very much in mind, okay? And do you agree that that has added value for clinical practice, that is for guiding diagnosis and selecting prevention and treatment interventions, the ultimate purpose of any diagnostic system, rather than talking about dopaminergic and serotonergic or whatever oxytocin-based systems, okay? And finally, do you agree that they provide useful information and added value for public health, for facilitating prevention, treatment, and monitoring at a population level? Do you agree that it is easy to incorporate the proposed description and guidelines into current clinical practices and education and training programs and tools? I have highlighted this whole question because, to my mind, friends, this is the question we are asking today for the rest of the day. I think my time is almost up, but as I say that I'm not going to talk much about ICD-11, this is a final question. So at the end of the day, these other questions will guide you to answer that whether the ICD-11 categories are an improvement or not in comparison with ICD-10. So just a few slides on the moving the main, what's out. There are certain categories which are out, certain categories which are in, and a lot of categories which are rehashed or repurposed or redone. So what's out? Two major categories are out. One is sleep-wake disorders, although we'll talk about that today. Dr. Ravi Gupta from AIIMS Rishikesh will talk about that. Now it's a separate chapter. And sexual dysfunctions, again, a separate chapter called conditions, a completely separate chapter. These two were done to reduce the stigma, as well as that they are not just psychiatric pagalpanki disorder, or there is no organic, non-organic distinction in either of these two major conditions. That distinction has been broken down. And the third condition, again for reducing stigma, is to completely shifted the gender identity disorder, the transsexualism and stuff like that, renamed as gender incongruence and placed under the conditions related to sexual dysfunction. These are out of the MBN chapter of ICD-11. So what's in? A lot of conditions in. I'm not going to talk about them because some of them will be covered in our later presentations, like catatonia, bipolar type 2, and a number of other disorders which have been brought in, thinking that these are important from the public health, global applicability, and cultural relevance perspective. That's all I'm going to say at this time. A lot has been redone. The entire childhood disorders, disorders with onset in children and adolescents is gone. The conditions are there, but they have been redistributed under different categories. A large chunk is neurodevelopmental disorders, which should be the next talk. But after that, they are elsewhere because it takes a lifespan approach, not just childhood onset specific approach or any age onset specific approach. The largest category of ICD-10, the famous or the infamous F4 of ICD-10, the neurotic stress-related and somatoform disorders, that huge chapter of common use, the neurotic term is gone completely from all over ICD-11, just like organic and non-organic conditions are gone. Conditions are reorganized under 3 or 4 separate chapters. Some of them will be covered, the obsessive compulsive, the disorders related to stress, they will be covered elsewhere in the future talks. Later talks. Major changes in category in substance use or addictive disorders to be covered by Dr. Atul Ambekar in his talk later. Major changes in personality disorders, complete overhauling. But hold on, Professor Pratap Sharan is coming to talk about that. And the mental disorders associated with pregnancy, childbirth, puerperium have been given a separate category on its own. This is a current look, which I don't think we need to go through this because this is widely available on the public source domain. As I said, there are 21 categories now. 21 major level sections now. Okay, it has increased. Is it a game changer or is it? We don't know. We don't know the answer. But as one of the letters to editor, again by top people, said that this balancing game between validity, utility, and public health can become difficult. It's not an easy job. Probably ICD-11 is wearing too many hats. It's a statistical tool, it's a diagnostic tool, and it's a health services monitoring tool. Too many games. I must finish off now. This is where we stand. This is where we come in. How does it impact your treatment, clinical practice and treatment? Thank you very much.
Ritu, you want to say something?
Sir, I will say first you.
Okay, I will say a few things. First is to thank Debashish for introducing the topic in his inimitable style and making forceful arguments for and against whatever hash mash or utility we have. And I think I don't know how we are going to take questions if there are any, because the chat box is empty. So I don't know whether anybody is asking any questions or not. So to pass the time, Ritu, can you say a few words?
First, I would like to thank you, thank to the organizers and also to Dr. Basu for a very good presentation, I must say. And he has described us about the utility of this new changes which have taken place. And if there are any questions, then we can take up that.
No,
There is one question.
One question, yes, there is one question in the chat box. Yeah.
When would it come in effect? Something like that.
Yeah, it would come into effect from 1st January 2022, which is just about less than 4 months from now.
It's still some time to sort of ruminate and regurgitate or whatever, or digest it further. There is another thank you for wonderful session. We are not looking for compliments. We are looking for questions. In the meantime, perhaps I can just make a comment that what is the relevance, Debashish, of comparing or butting in DSM-5 with ICD-11? Because to my mind, I'll qualify the question. DSM-5 or DSM is national pride of Americans for American market, American system. So why make a conjuring trick to make it compatible or make ICD-11 compatible with DSM or DSM-5 or whatever? Any comments on that?
Sir, a quick comment on that would be for two reasons. One is that it is DSM is a very influential system, although it's a parochial system to be used only in the North America, but as we know that is used heavily for not just for clinical as well as for research purposes. So it was to harmonize the both. And the second is probably a less honorable thing about power equations. And because as we know that the seat of the power is often there, and rather than getting into a conflict path, they thought that we should go on to a common path, and that's the reason why many of the things have been harmonized with this.
Good. Good old Scottish saying, who he pays, the piper calls the tune. So USA funds WHO to its hilt, and without its funding, WHO is nothing.
Yes,
so they have influence.
Yes, sir. I think there's one more question.
There's one more question. Probably we can take one of.
Okay, one is about MHCA from Dr. Gurvinder Pal Singh. I can see, yes, of course. The Mental Health Care Act just defines mental illness on its own, but it also says that it is as defined by the standard guidelines or the international guidelines. So by that means, when the ICD-11 codes are adopted, they have already been adopted, but when they come into effect from January 2022, they should be applicable for defining mental disorders for the Mental Health Care Act 2017 also.
There is one point raised. Does this mean that there is more space to explore and work in diagnosis and intervention with gross root level and so on? Can you comment on that?
I mean, one of the ideas behind not just the mental health disorders, but also the entire ICD-11, as I said, is that to reach more of grassroots level practice for non-specialists and especially for primary care. So, the idea is that whether it actually works out or not in the field, that only time can tell. I cannot say, but that's the purpose. Yes, that's one of the purposes.
Another question is, sir, can we ensure cultural diversity is taken care in classification?
Yes, to the extent possible. I have not gone into the process of this ICD-11, making of the ICD-11. It's an extremely laborious, tedious process done over more than 10 years. And there, they have reached multiple countries, including India. Dr. Pratap Sharan has worked closely with Dr. Shekhar Saxena and other people, Geoffrey Reid. So cultural differences have been tried to take care of, but you cannot possibly take care of each and every culturally valid. For example, the Dhat syndrome, which was there in ICD-10 as one of the categories, now in ICD-11, it does not find a name any longer because they have to balance so many different countries' culture. But to the extent possible, they have tried to accommodate that. I think we have run out of time now.
Yes,
No, there is just one more question, which is a indignant participant. He's asking why no expert from NIMHANS, the most advanced research institute in the country. I don't think we have any answer to that.
No, we have an answer. We have speaker from NIMHANS, sir. How is it possible?
No. Expert. I don't know where
expert.
this expert should be,
Okay.
whether in
Yeah.
ICD-11 field trials or as a speaker or whatever. I really cannot comment on that. So I think we are running out of time, and I take this opportunity to thank Debashish for a lovely presentation as usual, and my chairmanship as brisk as it possibly can be, though dented by old age. And lastly, a cliche, thank you all for allowing me this opportunity to be with you. It always is great to be with friends. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Basu. Thank you very much.